She lay in a hospital bed pretending to be too weak to survive, never imagining her own husband would abandon her before the doctors even finished speaking. The moment Grant Mercer walked away to marry his wealthy boss, he believed he had escaped a burden. He had no idea he had just destroyed the only person protecting everything he owned. Before we dive into it, tell me in the comments where you're from. I love seeing the different places people tune in from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. Please stick with me, because every decision in this story changes everything. Corinne Hale had always been the quiet one. She never cared about attention or recognition, even after spending years making sacrifices that allowed her husband to believe he was a self-made success. Behind the scenes, she had quietly built financial connections, secured investments, and protected everything they owned without ever asking for credit. Grant enjoyed the expensive home, growing business, and respected reputation, convinced they were all the result of his own hard work. Then Corinne suddenly became seriously ill, or so it appeared. Doctors admitted her to the hospital, and everyone believed she was facing a difficult battle. Instead of standing beside his wife, Grant saw the situation as an opportunity to change his life. His billionaire CEO, Vivian Cross, had been showing interest in him, promising a future filled with wealth, influence, and luxury. Without questioning Corinne's condition or offering comfort, Grant began imagining a future without her, convinced that leaving his sick wife behind was the fastest path to everything he had ever wanted. Lying alone in her hospital room, Corinne couldn't help thinking about how her marriage had unraveled one small disappointment at a time. When she and Grant first married, they dreamed of building a life together. His construction company struggled through its early years, facing unpaid invoices, failed projects, and mounting debt. Rather than chasing her own successful career, Corinne quietly stepped back to help from behind the scenes. Using her financial knowledge and trusted business contacts, she arranged anonymous investments, introduced private lenders, and solved problems before Grant even knew they existed. Every time his company survived another crisis, Grant celebrated what he believed was his own determination. As the business expanded, Grant changed. Praise from clients and industry leaders fed his ego until he no longer appreciated the woman who had stood beside him from the beginning. He started viewing Corinne's quiet nature as an embarrassment at business dinners and formal events, wishing she were more glamorous and influential. Instead of defending his wife, he slowly distanced himself from her. Vivian Cross noticed Grant's growing ambition almost immediately. As his wealthy CEO, she flattered him with compliments, convinced him he belonged among powerful executives, and hinted that someone with his potential deserved a partner who could elevate his public image. Grant eagerly believed every word. Corinne recognized the growing gap between them, but she remained silent. She never revealed that the financial security Grant proudly claimed as his achievement had always rested on decisions she made quietly in the background, protecting both his company and their future without asking for recognition. After months of watching her husband drift further away, Corinne reached a painful conclusion. Grant no longer measured people by love, loyalty, or character. He cared only about success, status, and money. She realized that if she confronted him directly, he would simply deny everything. Instead, she wanted to know who he truly was when faced with a choice between commitment and personal gain. With the help of her longtime attorney and a physician she trusted completely, Corinne arranged a carefully planned medical test. The diagnosis appeared serious enough to make everyone believe she faced a long and uncertain recovery, but no one's health was ever placed at risk. Only a small circle knew the truth. Corinne understood that whatever Grant chose next would reveal the future of their marriage. His reaction came faster than she expected. Rather than sitting beside her hospital bed or asking doctors how he could help, Grant complained about missed meetings, delayed projects, and the inconvenience of spending time at the hospital. He spoke more about how her illness would affect his career than about her condition. Every visit became shorter, and every conversation felt colder. Meanwhile, Vivian Cross quietly took advantage of the situation. She encouraged Grant to focus on his future instead of sacrificing it for someone who might never fully recover. She painted a picture of a life filled with wealth, influence, and endless opportunities if he stopped looking backward. Grant listened without hesitation, becoming more distant with every passing day. Watching it all unfold from her hospital room, Corinne finally received the answer she had been searching for, even though it hurt more than she had imagined. Only a few days after Corinne was admitted to the hospital, Grant walked into her room carrying a thin envelope instead of flowers or words of encouragement. His expression showed no concern, only impatience. Corinne looked at him quietly, already sensing why he had come. Without asking how she was feeling or speaking to her doctor, Grant placed the envelope on the small table beside her bed and told her he couldn't keep living like this. He said he deserved a future with someone healthy, successful, and able to stand beside him in the world he wanted to enter. Then he admitted the truth he had been hiding. He planned to marry Vivian Cross. According to him, Vivian understood his ambitions and could give him the wealthy lifestyle and powerful connections he deserved. He insisted this wasn't about cruelty but about making the best decision for his future. Every word cut deeper than the last, yet Corinne remained calm. She didn't argue, beg, or remind him of everything she had sacrificed to help him succeed. She slowly picked up the divorce papers and signed each page without hesitation. Her silence confused Grant, who had expected tears or desperate pleas to change his mind. Instead, she handed the documents back with a peaceful expression and wished him well. Certain he had finally freed himself from a burden, Grant left the hospital feeling relieved and optimistic about the glamorous life waiting for him with Vivian. As the door closed behind him, he smiled with confidence, completely unaware that Corinne had expected this moment all along and that his decision had quietly set something far greater into motion. The moment the hospital room door closed behind Grant, the heavy silence disappeared. Corinne slowly sat up, removed the blanket from her lap, and stood on her feet without the slightest sign of weakness. A nurse who had been part of the carefully planned arrangement smiled with relief, while her physician assured her everything had unfolded exactly as expected. They admired the strength it had taken for her to remain calm through such a painful conversation. Although Grant's words had hurt, Corinne never allowed her emotions to change the plan. A few minutes later, her attorney entered the room carrying a folder filled with legal documents. He confirmed that the divorce papers Grant had eagerly signed and the agreements Corinne had quietly prepared months earlier had now activated every financial protection clause. Ownership structures had shifted exactly as intended, and nothing could be reversed without her approval. The attorney then explained that the anonymous investment company holding most of the outstanding loans tied to Grant's construction business officially belonged to Corinne alone. For years, she had secretly purchased debt, financed expansions, and protected the company from financial collapse without revealing her identity. Grant had always believed anonymous investors believed in his talent, never realizing the person keeping his business alive had been his own wife. Corinne listened without celebrating. She simply instructed everyone involved to remain completely silent. There would be no dramatic announcement and no attempt to embarrass Grant. She wanted the truth to reveal itself through his own decisions. Sooner or later, he would discover exactly who had been standing behind his success all along, and by then, it would already be too late to undo the choices he had made. Only a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Grant and Vivian celebrated their engagement with lavish parties before hosting an extravagant wedding attended by influential executives, investors, and business leaders. Grant enjoyed every moment, convinced he had finally reached the life he had always dreamed of. He walked confidently through the elegant venue, introducing himself to wealthy guests as if he had always belonged among them. The admiration and attention only strengthened his belief that leaving Corinne had been the smartest decision he had ever made. Vivian proudly stood beside him, assuring everyone that Grant would soon play a much bigger role in her growing company. During private conversations, she promised that after their honeymoon she would appoint him president, giving him authority over major expansion projects and future investments. Grant imagined himself becoming one of the most respected business leaders in the country, surrounded by wealth and influence. Whenever someone casually mentioned his previous marriage, Grant dismissed Corinne without hesitation. He described her as a quiet woman who had never understood business and claimed she had contributed nothing meaningful to his success. He insisted that his achievements came entirely from his own hard work and determination. Vivian never questioned his version of the story, accepting every word as truth. What neither of them knew was that every major project they planned depended on financing from an anonymous investment firm. The loans supporting new developments, property acquisitions, and future growth were all connected to a single unseen owner. Confident that endless opportunities lay ahead, Grant and Vivian celebrated their future together, completely unaware that the foundation beneath their success was far more fragile than they could ever imagine. The excitement of the wedding barely lasted a few days before the first signs of trouble appeared. Grant arrived at work expecting to finalize several major construction projects, but instead he was met with urgent calls from his finance department. Multiple banks had unexpectedly frozen funding approvals, delaying contracts that were supposed to begin immediately. At first, Grant dismissed the problem as a temporary issue caused by changing market conditions. He assured everyone that the delays would be resolved within days. Instead, the situation grew worse. Investors who had once eagerly supported their expansion began requesting emergency meetings, asking difficult questions about outstanding loans and future financial security. Vivian's confidence slowly turned into frustration as more reports landed on her desk. She demanded answers from accountants and financial advisors, but no one could explain why every source of refinancing had suddenly disappeared. Grant continued insisting that the economy was responsible, believing the setbacks were affecting everyone. However, each attempt to secure new funding ended with the same response. Applications were declined, negotiations stalled, and lenders refused to move forward without approval from a single anonymous financial group that had quietly gained control of nearly every significant debt connected to both Grant's construction company and Vivian's corporation. Desperate to protect their ambitious expansion plans, Vivian ordered her legal and financial teams to contact the mysterious organization directly. Formal requests for meetings were submitted, generous settlement offers were proposed, and new business partnerships were suggested. Every message received the same polite but firm reply. The anonymous owner had no interest in renegotiating the agreements. As uncertainty spread through both companies, Grant began realizing this was far more serious than a temporary financial setback. After weeks of failed negotiations, the anonymous investment group finally agreed to one meeting. Vivian believed this was their last chance to save the expansion projects, so she gathered her senior executives, attorneys, and financial advisors for the appointment. Grant arrived beside her feeling confident that they were about to meet an elderly billionaire or a powerful investor interested only in profits. He rehearsed persuasive arguments in his mind, certain he could convince the mysterious owner to approve new financing. The boardroom filled with quiet anticipation as everyone waited. A few moments later, the conference room door slowly opened. Instead of an unfamiliar business tycoon, Corinne walked inside wearing an elegant executive suit, carrying a portfolio with calm confidence. Grant froze in his chair, unable to believe what he was seeing. Vivian looked from Corinne to the other executives, confused by the respectful expressions on their faces. Before anyone could speak, the chairman stood up. One by one, every executive around the table rose to welcome Corinne. The room that had been filled with uncertainty suddenly became completely silent. Grant stared in disbelief as the chairman smiled warmly and introduced Corinne as the founder and sole owner of the investment firm that controlled the loans supporting both his construction company and Vivian's corporation. Grant's face turned pale. Everything he believed about his marriage, his career, and his own success collapsed in a single moment. Vivian struggled to process the revelation, realizing the woman Grant had dismissed as unimportant was actually the person holding the future of both businesses in her hands. Corinne calmly took her seat at the head of the table, meeting Grant's shocked eyes without anger, knowing the truth no longer needed to stay hidden. For several long seconds, Grant could not find the words to speak. When he finally stood, he insisted there had been a misunderstanding and tried to explain away everything that had happened. He claimed the divorce had been a difficult decision made under pressure and attempted to convince everyone that he had never known the full truth. His excuses filled the silent boardroom, but no one interrupted him. Corinne listened patiently without showing anger or satisfaction. When Grant finished, Corinne quietly opened the portfolio she had placed on the table. One document after another revealed years of financial records, investment agreements, loan purchases, and confidential contracts. Each page showed how she had secretly stepped in whenever Grant's construction company faced bankruptcy or major losses. She had arranged emergency funding, negotiated better financing terms, and protected the business through anonymous companies, allowing Grant to believe every success came from his own talent. As the evidence continued, Vivian slowly realized that many of her corporation's biggest expansion projects had also been financed with capital originating from Curran's investment firm. The partnership she had proudly celebrated would never have existed without Curran's quiet support. Her confidence faded as the full picture became impossible to deny. Around the table, executives exchanged stunned glances. The person they had expected to negotiate with was not simply a wealthy investor but the individual who had silently shaped the financial future of both companies for years. Respect naturally shifted toward Curran as everyone recognized where the real authority had always been. Grant lowered his eyes, unable to defend the image he had built of himself. The confidence that once defined him disappeared, replaced by the painful realization that the success he claimed as his own had rested on Curran's unseen sacrifices all along. The silence in the boardroom ended when Vivian turned toward Grant with disbelief written across her face. She demanded to know why he had never told her the truth about Curran. Grant struggled to answer, insisting he had no idea who his former wife really was. His explanation only made the situation worse. Vivian realized she had married a man who had abandoned the very person responsible for protecting the financial foundation of both their businesses. What she once believed was a smart personal and professional decision had suddenly become a costly mistake. Board members began asking difficult questions about Grant's judgment and leadership. If he had been so careless in his personal life, they wondered how many poor decisions he might make while leading the company. Several executives openly questioned whether he should continue holding a position of authority during such a serious financial crisis. The confidence they once placed in him disappeared almost instantly. Vivian no longer defended him. Instead, she admitted that their marriage had created more risk than opportunity. She informed Grant that his appointment as the company's future president was cancelled effective immediately. Before the meeting ended, the board voted to remove him from every executive responsibility until further notice. The promotion he had proudly celebrated after the wedding vanished before it had even begun. Grant looked around the room searching for support, but no one came to his defense. Vivian avoided his eyes, focused only on protecting her corporation from further damage. In a matter of hours, the glamorous future Grant had imagined with wealth, power, and influence disappeared. The life he had abandoned Curran to pursue collapsed almost overnight, leaving him with nothing except the consequences of the choices he had made. In the days that followed, Grant tried everything he could think of to reach Curran. He called her office, left messages with her assistants, and waited outside her headquarters hoping she would agree to speak with him. After several attempts, Curran finally accepted a brief meeting in a quiet conference room. Grant entered with tired eyes and a broken confidence that was completely different from the man who had walked away from her hospital bed. He apologized repeatedly, admitting he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He claimed he had been blinded by ambition and promised that, if given another chance, he would spend the rest of his life proving he had changed. Curran listened without interrupting. When he finished, she calmly looked at him and spoke with quiet certainty. She reminded Grant that she had never pushed him away or abandoned their marriage. The choice had always been his. He had willingly traded loyalty, trust, and genuine love for the promise of wealth and status. No one had forced him to sign the divorce papers or leave her when he believed she was seriously ill. Without raising her voice, Curran explained that forgiveness did not mean restoring what had already been broken. She wished him no harm, but she would not rebuild a relationship founded on betrayal. Shortly afterward, she instructed her legal team to complete every remaining agreement that removed Grant from the companies and investments under her control. For the first time in many years, Grant faced every challenge alone. There was no unseen partner quietly solving financial problems or protecting him from the consequences of his choices. He finally understood the value of what he had thrown away, but the realization had come far too late. As the months passed, Corinne stopped looking back at the life she had left behind and focused entirely on the future she wanted to build. The betrayal that had once filled her with heartbreak no longer controlled her decisions. Instead, it became a reminder of the strength she had discovered within herself. She expanded her investment company across the country, opening new offices and supporting businesses led by honest, hardworking people who had been ignored simply because they lacked powerful connections or flashy reputations. Rather than chasing publicity, Corinne chose to work quietly, just as she always had. She believed character mattered more than appearances, and every investment reflected that belief. Young entrepreneurs who had been rejected by larger firms finally found someone willing to recognize their potential. Many of those businesses flourished, creating opportunities for families and communities that had long been overlooked. Outside of work, Corinne rebuilt her personal life with patience. She surrounded herself with trusted friends who appreciated her kindness instead of her wealth. Their support reminded her that genuine relationships were built on respect and honesty, not on status or financial success. For the first time in years, she felt completely free to live without pretending to be someone else or hiding the accomplishments she had earned. The painful chapter with Grant no longer defined her story. Instead of allowing betrayal to make her bitter, she transformed it into motivation to create something even greater. Every challenge she had survived strengthened her confidence and gave her a clearer sense of purpose. Corinne no longer felt the need to remain in the background. She stepped forward on her own terms, embracing a future shaped by integrity, resilience, and the quiet confidence that had always been her greatest strength. Several months later, Grant attended a prestigious business conference hoping to rebuild his damaged reputation and reconnect with industry leaders. He kept a low profile, aware that many people now viewed him differently after everything that had happened. As he walked through the crowded ballroom, he noticed a familiar face across the room. Corinne had just arrived, dressed with quiet elegance and carrying herself with calm confidence. The atmosphere changed as influential executives, respected entrepreneurs, and longtime investors warmly welcomed her. Their admiration was sincere, built on years of trust, fairness, and wisdom rather than her financial success alone. Grant watched from a distance as people sought her advice and thanked her for helping them grow their businesses. No one praised her because of her wealth. They respected her because she had earned their confidence through honesty, humility, and generosity. For the first time, Grant fully understood that the qualities he had once dismissed were the very reasons others valued her so highly. Gathering his courage, he approached Corinne and quietly asked if they could speak for a moment. He offered one final apology, admitting that he had allowed greed and ambition to destroy the best relationship he had ever known. He accepted full responsibility and said he would regret his choices for the rest of his life. Corinne listened with kindness but without hesitation. She thanked him for his apology and sincerely wished him peace and success in whatever path he chose next. Then she smiled politely and walked away to greet other guests waiting to speak with her. Grant remained standing alone, realizing she carried no bitterness toward him because she had already let go of the past and embraced a life far beyond the one he had abandoned. 1 year later, Corinne returned to the same hospital where the most painful chapter of her life had begun. She walked slowly through the familiar hallway, remembering the day she had watched Grant leave with divorce papers while believing she was too sick to survive. The memories still carried sadness, but they no longer brought pain. Time had given her something far more valuable than revenge. It had given her peace. Standing outside the room where everything changed, Corinne reflected on the decision that had once seemed impossible. Pretending to be seriously ill had never been about trapping Grant or ruining his future. She had simply needed to know whether the man she loved would choose loyalty over ambition when it mattered most. His decision had revealed the truth that words never could. In the end, he had walked away on his own. Grant's downfall had not happened because Corinne sought revenge or used her power to destroy him. His losses came from the choices he freely made. Greed convinced him that money and status were more valuable than love, trust, and the woman who had quietly protected him through every challenge. When he abandoned her, he also abandoned the foundation that had supported his success for years. Corinne took one final look down the hallway before turning toward the exit. She felt no anger and carried no desire to revisit the past. The greatest victory had never been watching Grant lose everything he once valued. It was discovering her own strength, embracing the life she had earned, and moving forward without fear or regret. With a peaceful smile, she stepped outside into the sunlight, grateful that the future ahead belonged entirely to her.